Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We're very excited to be talking to you guys tonight about the 8th grade class trip to Boston. My name is Sarah Golding. I'm one of the trip coordinators.
And I'm Beth Amaral. I'm the assistant principal at West Rocks. Good evening, everyone. So glad that you could join us tonight.
And I'm James Petropoulos, 8th grade social studies teacher and Sarah's assistant.
We're going to get through some of our presentation tonight. I wrote in the chat, feel free to ask questions and we'll do our best at the end of the presentation to answer them. You can do that in both English and Spanish. The presentation you're about to view is the same exact presentation that the students viewed during the day today at school. So a lot of them probably came home, or hopefully, and gave you a little information. They should have also came home with a packet of information for you, including a permission slip and a lot of this information in both English and Spanish. Our trip is April 20th and 21st of 2023, so it'll be here before you know it. Some of these images are pictures of places that we'll actually be visiting along the way, which Mr. Petropoulos will talk a little bit more about in a minute. There's our email addresses, mine and Mr. Petropoulos's. Please reach out with any questions or concerns, especially around financial things. We're here to help and we have a lot of resources. So we hope that you can contact us so we can put you, get you the support and things that you need. We want every student to be experiencing this trip. It's an amazing thing. I told the students today in the assembly that the cost of this trip should never be the reason why a student doesn't attend. There's a lot of scholarships and financial fundraising opportunities, which we'll talk a little bit about tonight. So those are ways to offset the personal cost of the trip so it's not coming out of someone's bank account. Tonight, I created an 8th grade Google Classroom. Students, if you're watching along with your families and you log in tonight, you're going to see an invitation from me. We do use this a lot for the trip, but we also use it for a lot of other things as it gets closer to the end of the year and promotion and things like that. You can see from my screenshot that I've already put tonight's presentation up on the stream. I also included a link to the popcorn fundraiser there so you can easily register your online account to start fundraising for your trip. Students need to accept that invite in order to see that information. The cost of the trip is $420 for 2 days. Last year's trip was to Philadelphia and New York City. We did 1 day in each city, and the cost of that was $390. So not much more, but I think we all can agree that the cost of everything has risen significantly in the last year. And a big part of the rise in cost for this trip was just in the bus and hotel itself. The bus prices have gone up tremendously, mainly due to the increase in gas costs. The 420, which is very nice, includes all meals except for one. That's a change from last year too. Last year, it included everything but two. This year, students' meals are all paid for except for one. On Friday, they have to have money for lunch. So that means Thursday's dinner, Friday's breakfast are included. We usually bring a bag lunch for the first day. Since we're traveling Thursday morning, the students pack a lunch and we eat when we arrive in the city. The price also includes all museums and attractions, the hotel and the bus. We do use a tour company, so some of that cost includes their fees. And I'll talk a little bit later about this when I talk about the hotel, but we also hire a security guard from an outside agency that literally sits in a chair outside the hotel rooms all night and literally just keeps guard and listens for things. And they contact myself or Miss Amaral in the event of emergency, but that's never happened. So I don't anticipate that being an issue this year. I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Petropoulos, and he's going to talk a little bit about where we're going and how it connects to the 8th grade social studies curriculum.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So when we go to Boston, we're going to be doing the Freedom Trail. And if anybody's familiar with Boston, it's a walk with guides that are dressed up in costume from the 18th century. And they go through the sites and all the places that we're going to be studying in social studies this year. So for instance, like the Battle of Bunker Hill, so there's a monument. They explain what's going to be, what happened at Bunker Hill. There's going to be the Boston Massacre. There's going to be other places there that they're going to explain all the different pieces of information that we're going to be covering in class. So the students are going to get to see how Boston was such a major part in our American Revolution. Then we go to the Boston Science Museum and in the Omni Theater, where students are going to, get to see different types of science apparatus that you're going to find in the museum, and very interesting. The Boston Tea Party Museum is going to be, consisted of all the information that dealt with the Boston Tea Party, which was pretty much the last event before the American Revolution. The JFK Library, obviously named after, John F. Kennedy. Go in there, we, give us information about him as being president. And one of the parts that I can't wait to see is going to be the Fenway Park tour, which I found out today that Fenway is the second oldest park. And we're going to get a historical tour about, all the behind the scenes events that happened at, Fenway Park. The Boston Red Sox, they're going to talk about the rivalry with the Yankees, Babe Ruth. So there's going to be a lot of good information there, especially if you're a baseball fan. The New England Aquarium, much different, because I did visit that myself a few years back, much different than the Norwalk Aquarium. But, same types of information, but a little different atmosphere. And it's, to me, it's a little bit bigger. So that will be a fun activity as well.
Thank you, Mr. Petropoulos. A couple requirements that we have in place for students. We constantly remind them that trips such as these are a privilege and not a right. It's important that students be in good academic standing in order to miss those 2 days of instructional time. If a student is failing any subject at the end of the second quarter, which is roughly the end of January, they would be put on an academic probation, and that plan requires them to check in with teachers at the end of the third quarter, which is roughly the first or second week of April, which is a mere 2 weeks before we go on the trip. If we will reevaluate grades at that point, and if students have shown growth, they'll be permitted to attend the trip. If the student is failing, there'll be a review by myself, Mr. Petrop, Dr. Reynolds, Ms. Amaral. I'm going to stress this one a lot this year. Students must also be in good standing in terms of behavior and attendance. We need to make good choices every day in the building to prove that we can make good choices when we're not in the building. We're going outside of Norwalk. We're going outside of the state of Connecticut. There's a lot of freedoms that come with these trips, and we have to be able to know that we can trust students to make the right choices. Students who have an excess amount of absences and or tardies, and I highlighted tardies because that seems to be an issue already this point in the year. They might lose the opportunity to go. The reason we're stressing tardies is because students have that freedom that I talked about. They're in groups in museums and they have timed check-ins. And if students can't make it to class on time, I'm not sure if they can make their check-in on time. And that's a safety issue when you're dealing with, 100 students or more. So we're really stressing those as expectations in order to qualify to go onto the trip. This is very wordy, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. And like I said, it's shared with you. I can email it out to anybody. But these are pretty much the field trip expectations set forth by the Board of Education in terms of all rules and expectations are in effect for the entire duration. Regulations about medications and administration of medications will be followed. Also, I'm going to say this a lot of times, West Rocks Middle School is not responsible for any valuables that are lost or stolen. Students are permitted to have their cell phones with them. for two reasons. One, photos, keepsakes, that kind of thing. And two is for communication with families. But we remind students constantly that they're encouraged to be aware of their personal property. We've taken a few trips where we've had students lose cell phones, wallets, and things like that. We will do whatever we can to help them find them. But in the end, if they don't find it, West Rocks is not responsible for replacing anything. Dress code policies are in effect. We're traveling at the end of April, and we all know that we've lived in this area long enough that could be 70 or could be 30. So you can pack accordingly. We'll talk about that as we get closer to the end to the trip. I will tell you that a raincoat is a must. Last year we were in New York City and got caught in some rain, and the students who did not have raincoats were not very happy. So that's one of the first things I'm putting in my bag this year. While on the trip, the students represent the school. So like I said, we have high expectations for behavior. And that means like in public places, proper language, no cutting in line, those kinds of things. Mr. Petropoulos used this example today with the students. Last year we were in Philadelphia, and we happened to be always bumping into a middle school group from another school who we happened to know that they were all together because they all had the same shirt on. But our students were actually appalled by the behavior that these students were demonstrating in public places. And we're very much aware of the fact that it was inappropriate. So like we said, they're representing the school and themselves, and so they should conduct themselves in a proper manner. Like I said, students are required to check in with chaperones at designated times and locations. And so we are really clear about that with students. We actually use the Remind app. So students who do have phones on the trip, it does come in handy because we can text everybody the same message to let them know where and when to meet up. And that is usually very, very helpful. We're staying at Sheridan right outside of Boston. It's always a little cheaper to stay in a hotel that's not in the city center. Students will be allowed to select at least one student who they will be guaranteed to be placed together in a room. Adults, chaperones, teacher chaperones are not sleeping in the same room as students. So 4 students are in an assigned hotel room together. Or last year we did have students request a double occupancy. That meant only 2 students, but they had to pay an additional fee per student. What they usually do for us at the hotel is females are on one floor, males are on another floor. And students are not allowed to be on a floor where their room is not located. We will talk more about this. We have very clear expectations and procedures about checking in to the rooms at night. Students are, like I said, only allowed in their assigned hotel room, not visiting other rooms, not using the hotel facilities. That means like the gym or the pool. They have access to a hotel phone where they can call the hotel room of their chaperone in case of an emergency. If they need medical assistance or anything like that. Any medications will be given to students at check-in when lights go out or in the morning in a private secure area. We do spend very little time at the hotel. Last year, Philadelphia was the first day and New York City was the second day. So we spent our overnight in Weehawken, New Jersey. And I'm pretty sure we were at the hotel less than 12 hours. By the time we checked in, everybody got showered and into bed, and we were up early the next morning for a 7 a.m. wake up with breakfast and rolling out of the hotel between, I think it was like 8:15, 8:30. The days are very jam-packed with activities. The students are going to want to just go to the hotel and sleep. They're going to be exhausted, especially the first day is the walking tour. And last year in Philadelphia, we also had a walking tour, and it wasn't very long, but a lot of that fresh air seems to tire them out very quickly. So I'm sure they will be quick into bed that evening. Medications, I won't talk about this very much, but you will need to have doctor authorization and all those documentations turned in with the nurse in order for us to dispense any medication to your child. You can read more about what's allowed for the kids to have and what we need to give them. And you can email us questions about that as it pertains to your child. We're holding a popcorn fundraiser right now. 7th grade is also doing the same fundraiser for their Nature's Classroom trip. This in the document I shared, this green popcorn fundraiser online sign up is an actual link you can click on, which takes you to the website to sign up, and you need that group ID. Students tomorrow in class and school will get the actual catalog and paper brochure that you could also sell with. 50% of your total sales goes towards the cost of the trip, and 75% of donations. I would caution you that we've had families who go online and make like $100 donation to a student. The student only really walks away with $75 of that. So if you know somebody that wants to make $100 donation to their trip, they can just write a check to the school. They can pay you. This way the student gets that whole donation and the company doesn't take a percentage of it. I'm not really sure why they do that, but I'm sure it has something to do with credit card fees and that kind of thing. These kind of fundraisers are very good to do, because if you do one of these, and we usually do like a Krispy Kreme donut one in the spring, between one or two of these fundraisers, you really could pay for the entire trip. Last year, not a lot of families took advantage of these, but we're trying to start them earlier this year in order to have more opportunities for people to be able to fundraise and offset the cost of their trip. You are the choices you make. Make good choices. That's kind of where I left this with the students today. Like, how you conduct yourself in the school, in our community at West Rocks, really does give us insight on how you would conduct yourself in the larger community and on a trip like this. So, when faced with something that you have the choice to make the good one, make the right one. And sometimes that's not always easy. But we want every student to experience something like this. And they can only do that if they are making good choices. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email myself, Miss Amaral, Mr. Petropoulos, either in English or Spanish. We're here to help. We want to make sure, once again, that every student who wants to attend does, regardless of the cost of the trip. I'm sure you still have a lot of questions, even though, it's like a short presentation, but we would be happy to answer anything on the phone or an email more in depth to put you at ease. In the packet the students have brought home, the initial deposit is $100, which needs to be turned in by December 1st. That's very important, because by December 1st, I have to let the company know roughly how many students are attending. And after December 1st, the $100 is non-refundable. What happened last year with a couple families is they paid the $100 deposit early on. And then right before the trip came up, I'm contacting them asking for a next payment. And then they said, oh, by the way, I don't think my child's going to attend. I cannot refund the $100 because December 1st, I'm paying the company the $100 deposit per student, and I don't get that money back. So please make sure if your student's interested that you meet that deadline. If you're unsure, that's why I set the deadline, pretty much 2 months from now, to give you guys time as families to make decisions. It also allows you time to do some fundraising with this popcorn one to really offset that deposit itself. But there's a lot of ways that we can work with you and be creative and make this a great experience for students. I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but I am going to turn it over to Miss Amaral, who's going to just give a little information in Spanish.
Buenas noches a todos los padres, familias. La siguiente información que Ms. Colin terminó de dar ahorita, podemos traducir, y tiene un paquete de información que los niños están llevando para casa mañana. Y si ustedes, después de mirar los papeles y tienen preguntas o tienen alguna duda, no saben de algo, pueden llamar a la escuela, y Ms. Cotto y Ms. Martínez, que son la oficina principal pueden ayudar a usted, o si necesita, pueden mandar un correo electrónico que estoy disponible para ayudarlos también. Más importante de todos, que todos los niños tienen la oportunidad de ir a la viaje con nosotros y que dinero no sería la razón para no participar. Si ustedes están interesados, por favor, pueden completar el formulario, porque nosotros estamos aquí para ayudarlos y queremos que todos los niños puedan ir y disfrutar con nosotros. Es una oportunidad súper grande para los niños de octavo y todos los años que los niños están yendo a la viaje están regresando súper felices y contentos que podían tener una oportunidad que no tenía fuera de la escuela. Entonces, como dice, si necesitan algo, pueden enviar un correo electrónico, pueden llamar a la escuela para hablar con las señoras o conmigo. Estoy disponible para ayudar a ustedes. So I just reassured all of the families, and I want to reassure anyone watching that sometimes the price of a trip like this might frighten some families. And I just want to repeat what Ms. Golding said at the very beginning, that should not be the reason why any family thinks that they should not have the opportunity. So all of our students that have gone on these trips in the past just have a fantastic time. And one of the things that I walked away last year is that some of our students were really making a decision based on if their friends were going to go. And that should not be the reason why your child goes or doesn't go, because friendships change minds very quickly. And we had several students who originally said no to our Philadelphia and New York trip last year. And then a week before the trip, they ended up wanting to go, and there just wasn't an opportunity to go. So I really, really want to encourage all of you, if you're just even thinking about it, to really have a conversations with your family. And if you have any questions or any doubts, please email us so that we can kind of support your thinking. Happy to help you. We have chaperones from school, teachers that go on the trip. We are well chaperoned. I will be on the trip as the administrator. We have families with our contact information. If there's any concerns about overnights and that's something you're not comfortable with, we can work with you. And we have regular check-ins. So we've done it. You can trust that thing. And I just hope that all of you will at least consider and look into this as a possibility for you and your child.
Thank you, Ms. Amaral. I just want to thank everybody for taking the time tonight to watch this, whether you're watching live or you're watching later on. Again, this presentation is on our YouTube channel, so it's something that is saved on here that you can go back and rewatch in case you missed information or you need to answer your own question before you reach out. But like Ms. Amaral said, again, we really encourage you to reach out. It's important that students experience something like this. For many of them, it might be the first time they're away from home or away from parents traveling. And we understand that. And we want to make you feel at ease as well. So we also do use the remind system with parents to keep you guys updated, because sometimes your children don't do a very good job of that. But it is a great experience that students will remember for the rest of their lives. One quick thing I just want to mention is we keep referencing last year, the New York at Philadelphia trip. We don't change location every year. The reason for the location of that trip was due to some COVID protocols. The Boston trip was actually originally planned for April of 2020. And we all know what happened to that. And then we didn't have a trip, and then we had to have like a trip that met some COVID guidelines. So we're sort of back on track with our Boston plan because it so closely aligns to the curriculum in social studies class. So again, we thank you for your time tonight. Reach out with any questions. We hope to see you all on the trip in the spring, and have a great rest of your evening.